From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and BikeTalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
And I'm Nick Richard.
You know, there are so many good urban planning and active living podcasts out there. And there's also so many really good bike podcasts out there. But there are very few that really focus on how bikes fit into this urbanism and safe streets and active lifestyle model. And that's where I think you and I think Bike Talk comes in. And that's what we want to be about. We want to make the connection between how fun and liberating bikes are with the role that they can play in our sustainable future. One quote that always comes to my mind, and we've used it before at the end of the show, is, "It's not that bikes solve any one problem in particular, but that they are a part of the solution to many problems." And I think that's true.
True.
I'm bringing all this up because over the weekend I saw the documentary Changing Lanes. It really is a Safe Streets 101 requirement before anyone runs for office or, in my mind, even speaks up at a public meeting. Many of the advocates, the authors, the civic leaders, and the cyclists that are featured in the film have been guests of ours on Bike Talk. Charles Komanoff, Gersh Kuntzman, Jesse Singer, Shabazz Stewart, Families for Safe Streets. The list really just goes on. I'm saying all this because our show strives to connect these thought leaders to you so that we can bring best practices to our local fights for better, safer, cleaner, quieter streets and towns that we live in.
Yeah, I saw David Byrne in the trailer. We have yet to get him on.
We have to get him on. I love David Byrne.
You know, he's getting up there.
And Jeanette Sadiq Khan is on also, and we haven't had her either.
How does he get them?
We're going to have to ask Ben.
All right. Well, you talk to him.
Briefly after the screening.
So we're at the first public screening of Changing Lanes, Ben Wolf's film, and I'm here with one of the stars. David Byrne is the other star, but the real star of the film is Bronwyn Brightener. And Ben, tell us really quick how you got involved in the film and how you got involved with Bronwyn.
I've been living in New York City since 1991. I grew up in LA, but ended up in New York, and I've been cycling in the city all that time and have been seeing dramatic changes. And when I was searching for a documentary topic, I thought that changes on the street would be an interesting story, especially given the heated politics around that subject. And so I thought, yeah, it's an interesting intersection of design and politics. And then I stumbled across McGuiness Boulevard, which was a particularly hot fight about what to do with a very dangerous street.
And you said that you do live near McGuiness.
I live about 5 miles away.
Yeah. And Bronwyn, how about you? Do you live near there? I'm guessing you do.
Yeah, I live a block away.
And how did you get involved in it?
I've lived in Greenpoint for 25 years, and in 2021, my son's teacher from our local public school, Matt Jensen, was killed crossing McGuiness Boulevard.
Right.
And at that time, I was on the Community Board Transportation Committee. So I was new to thinking about street design, but people started grieving together. But then those conversations about grief led to conversations about these sort of hidden traumas that everybody had lived trying to cross that street, which is a 4-lane kind of arterial highway that connects two highways but cuts through a residential neighborhood. And so those conversations led me to start asking with all of these other parents and activists, why does it have to be this way?
Right.
And so we decided to try and form a coalition to change it.
Right. And then how did you all meet?
Well, we just met by me showing up, and the advocates were quite open and excited about sharing what they were trying to do with me.
Yeah. Well, it's a wonderful partnership, and I really think that the film should be, urban planning, street politics 101, because as you talk about in the film, there's a real history. I wonder if you could talk about that, about why you chose to put so much history of streets in the film.
Yeah, I think that there's an assumption a lot of people make that the status quo on the streets is just sort of something set in stone, that it's just was somehow created out of whole cloth, and it's just the way it is, and don't mess with something that's already working or whatever. And I think if people go into the history, they'll learn, the street actually was a lot of different things at a lot of different times, and maybe what worked at one time is no longer working because now people are using it differently, or there's more people, or something along those lines. So I think, giving people a little context is important, and also maybe an appreciation of how streets are set up in other places, which can be quite different than here. And so I think that's important. I think if you're going to have a debate about a street, you really should know the context to have an intelligent conversation.
Right, and so many people don't, I'm afraid. We talked last time about how I think the micro of McGuiness Boulevard really illuminates the macro of what we're all dealing with, whether it be Los Angeles or whatever. I was very frustrated during the film, but the film ends on such a positive note, and I wonder if you could explain that, where you are today and where you're going.
Oh, it's very complicated. Okay. Do you want the real?
We don't want to give away every last.
What am I not giving away?
Well, you have to see the film, that's for sure. Changing Lanes.
Give away the film, right? Okay. Oh, so well. Well, we struggled for many years. We had DOT propose a safety plan that we agreed with and supported. Right. Then that was yanked. That safety plan was yanked by Mayor Adams. And now it looks like we will get a safety plan implemented on McGuiness Boulevard.
Right. That's our hope, and I think the film's going to illuminate that as well. Ben Wolf, thank you so much for the film. And Bronwyn Brightener, thank you for all of your efforts over the years. And thanks for coming to the screening out in Los Angeles.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for having me. And go to changinglanesdoc.com if you are interested in finding out where you can see the film.
I think this was the first public screening.
This was the first sort of commercial screening. Yeah, there's been a bunch of screenings, but this is the beginning of its commercial life, and it will be showing in some more theaters over the next few weeks, and then probably in the summer it should start streaming on the big platforms and be more widely available.
Great. Well, it's going to have a long life, I'm sure. Ben, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
That was Ben and Bronwyn Brightener, who was one of the advocates who fought so hard to make McGuiness Boulevard a complete street.
People say nobody drives in L.A., and I'm here with Eric Brightwell, the producer, co-host of Nobody Drives in L.A. What brings you out to Changing Lanes tonight?
We just had Ben on our show doing an interview, and we had a really good chat. There was so much more that we wanted to say to him. And also, we just wanted to show support for him, too, though.
Absolutely. It was a wonderful film, no?
Yeah. It's not just about bike advocacy. As a film, it's entertaining. You don't have to care about bikes. It's like a Frederick Wiseman documentary. There's a lot of, meeting stuff. And it's about politics and psychology. And it's also really pretty. It shows that he was a cinematographer, primarily.
Absolutely. And I loved all the historical footage.
I thought all the history was really compelling because it really deflates a lot of the counter arguments, the opposition that you get by showing, because it's true in Los Angeles too. That's one of the things that we were talking about the BRT on Colorado Boulevard, and that a lot of people were saying it's going to ruin our small town feel. And I assume wrongly that everyone knows about that we had the largest interurban railway system. Right. So I was like, your small town was created because that was a train line. Right. Owned by Henry Huntington, who founded all these towns as real estate things around trains. And people were like, I didn't know that. I had no idea. I don't know if I changed their minds, but,
Well, I think that's what's great about this film. It should be required viewing for, I think, everybody, but certainly politicians and people who are advocating against things that we're fighting for.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I would love it if if this was just screened at all neighborhood council meetings.
Right, totally.
Every transportation committee at least, but honestly, governing boards should.
Eric Brightwell, Nobody Drives in L.A. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for doing that, Taylor.
Yeah, it was fun.
So, you still getting ready for your ride?
I'm getting nervous. The last couple of days, I've been futzing with the bike. I changed my seat today, and I've been playing with the position of the seat a little bit, see if I can get a little bit more comfortable as I add weight to it. But I am a little bit anxious about it as the date is fast approaching and I'm getting ready to leave,
Yeah, one of the parts that makes me nervous thinking about it is Highway 1. We had somebody on Bluesky, one of our friends there, Sundance, get in touch and say, well, first that he offered to host you if you're going down to Santa Cruz, but you're going starting north of there. But then he offered to hook you up with a safety device.
First, he said, "What the hell are you thinking riding on Highway 1?" and maybe
we have him.
Really, I don't know.
Here he is. On Bluesky, he's Sundance, but in real life, he's Abe.
Hey, Abe.
Hey, thanks for having me on, everybody.
Thanks for the warning about Highway 1. You know, I have driven on it, and I am aware that there's not a lot of shoulder and there is a fair amount of traffic, but it's beautiful. Am I stupid for trying to ride on it?
Not at all. It's the most beautiful bike ride in the world. It's so stunning. I was just up on the Sonoma coast a week ago, and it's just awesome.
Oh, beautiful. Great. And that means I can drink wine also if I'm up in Napa and Sonoma, right?
The whole way.
But then you're definitely going to want to light up his device. What is it? It's a lane saber, or is that just your version of it, Abe?
Yeah, there's two versions. I'd like to offer you either of them, whatever best suits your bike and your ride. The lane saber is the open source Creative Commons ones that I created off of parts you could buy at a bike shop. So anybody anywhere can make their own safety. But I'm also about to launch one through the bike company Calfee Design.
Sure.
I think maybe you've heard of Craig Calfee. We're branching out into transportation cycling, and one of the accessories that we're building is the space bar, which is a lighter weight version of the lane saber, and it mounts right to the bottom of your seat. So it's a little bit more convenient for most cyclists.
And can you sort of describe what it looks like for the audience, because they can't see it as you hold it up in our Zoom?
Yeah, it's a plastic tube or a sealed LED rod wrapped around a couple of different materials. One's fiberglass and one's aluminum, and they're designed to light up the space 3 feet to the side of your bicycle.
Cool. To kind of warn cars, give me some space.
Yeah, I posted many pictures on Bluesky. I share the plans there. There's a Google Doc that can walk you through how to build your own. It just takes about $45 worth of materials there. The one that we'll be releasing shortly this summer is a little bit higher quality there. Yeah, a little bit more finished product.
Right.
Maybe we'll put it on our site.
I'd love that. Yeah.
How did you come up with this idea?
So I had a really rough cycling year in 2023, and I was real stressed out, and I was on the road with a couple of accidents with cars. And just a little bit later, I had this really close pass of a child. A mother on her way to school just buzzed this child on an old bike bus I was leading, and I just had enough. And when I confronted the lady at the top of the hill, it turned out they didn't even see the child. And it was a vision thing. It wasn't something about malice. It was just, they just missed the kid, and they didn't even know about the 3-foot passing law. So I educated them, and then I wanted to put a flag, and then I made it a version 2, a different kind of kickstand, and then I added the light so I can use it at night now.
Wow.
Great.
Well, Craig Calfee has been on the show before, and I'm certainly aware of Calfee Design. And if you're offering, I would love the space bar. I think that would be a really great thing to have on the bike, especially on Highway 1, but also for other parts of my journey. And I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
I would love to send one down to you. Can I just tell you a little bit about how it works and what it does?
Please, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an amazing tool, amazing communication tool. It really visually communicates to a driver as they're approaching that there is this boundary next to the cyclist that they need to respect. And for a year and a half, I've been riding with this. I've never had anybody ever hit the flag. Drivers pass with care and caution. They come up behind you and they see it right away, and they just understand without having to take an active role in that communication. They just understand what's appropriate, and it just de-escalates. It's a tool for de-escalation, really.
Great. I love that idea of, sharing the space in a way that no one feels like they're getting put out.
Yeah, drivers can still pass. There's no barrier there. They just have to pass 3 feet over. One of the most amazing things I found about riding with this lane saber is just how it's restored the joy of cycling to me. I was anxious and I was afraid, and I rode fast on the road, and I was aggressive and held my lane, and I just don't have to do any of that anymore.
Well, that's a great peace of mind. You're not constantly looking over your shoulder, looking and listening for cars because you know that they can see you.
That's right.
I feel better already, honestly. I have been worried about that stretch, and it's about 400 miles. Abe, Sundance from Calfee Design and from Bluesky, thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to sending it down.
I love the idea of being safer on the road. And that brings up, Gloria Ines, who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago, Nick, who's thinking about getting into biking and was going to buy a bike. One of her big worries is being safe on the road. And she's made a decision about which way she's going to go. So here's Gloria Ines.
Hey, Dave.
Thanks for coming back on. Gas prices are still high. Are you still thinking about a bike? Tell me where you are in the process.
Still thinking about a bike. The e-bike, I talked to you a little bit about that and being able to keep up with traffic, but the prices are just too high, just as
Right.
along with the gas prices. But you were kind enough to offer to give me a bike and then maybe doing the co-op thing so I can work on it, learn about it, and fix the wheels.
I have an old Trek that my wife had, and I had lent it to another friend from the theater, actually, and the wheels got stolen. And I have always been meaning to go to the bike oven and get new wheels on it. I have a couple of old sets of wheels that I'm not sure are going to work, but I think the guys at the bike oven will be able to help you out. So I am going to give you this Trek. It's a great crossover. It's the kind of bike Jim was talking about. It's a exercise hybrid bike, and I think that you'll really like it. You can set up a time and go to the bike oven and ask for Joe Borfo, Reverend Joe, and he or one of the other wrenches will help you figure it out. Are you pretty good with working on stuff? Are you confident with that or what?
I'm pretty handy, I will say. I'm the oldest, so I know growing up, me and my dad, I would help him with things, and I'm not afraid of doing all that stuff. And I think I'll have a lot more appreciation for riding the bike if I'm working on it and like knowing it intimately in that way.
Absolutely. And the confidence that comes with knowing how to fix a flat or knowing how to adjust your gears or adjust your brakes is really big. I think there's a rack on it, but maybe not. But that might be one of the things that you want to look at is getting a rack on the bike. And I think one of the things that Jim also mentioned that was so great is the sense of community that comes with going to a bike co-op.
Yeah, definitely want a rack because like I said last time, like I like my stuff. I want to bring it with me. And then, and I think also like meeting people, I think it'll be a little less daunting because, again, riding it in traffic, I think is probably my biggest, I'm sure that's a common fear.
Totally. Well, one of the things that we often talk about is picking a route. The route that you drive is not always the best route to ride. Hollywood Boulevard has a really nice protected bike lane now, so that's a great route for someone who lives in Hollywood. But you have to be very careful about other streets. But you'll quickly learn that. So if you don't mind, we'll stay with you. I'll get you the bike. You can reach out to the bike oven, which is near Hollywood, and figure out a time to go there. Maybe I'll even show up at the bike oven and we'll talk to you and Joe at the same time as you're starting to set your bike up.
That would be awesome. I would love that.
Good.
Great.
We'll stick with you, and hopefully gas prices do come down, although I don't really care.
I'm not feeling it.
Good. Gloria Ines, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We got some listener email. We got one from Brett McGraw, who, after I expressed a little bit of nervousness about my ride, he said, "You got this. Just keep pedaling." And I thought that was pretty good advice. Yeah. Just keep pedaling. So thanks, Brett.
And he's joining you, maybe?
And he might join me in Minnesota. Yeah, that's what he said. And I'm all for that.
Yeah, Minnesota. There's other friends of the show there, like Laura Mitchell. All right. We also got some posts on Bluesky. Someone said, adding my voice to backpack thread. The one, remember where you said, I don't get people who wear backpacks? I wear one because it lets me use any of my bikes, not just the one with a back rack or the one with the basket. It also keeps me warmer in winter and has a built-in shock absorber system, for carrying more delicate things, eggs, six-packs, etc. I can also go more places, less maintained roads, rogue trails, etc.
Okay.
However,
sorry. Once again, I stand corrected. I often wear a backpack too.
But there was a downside. They wrote, it does make my back sweatier and my shoulders sore if I'm carrying heavier loads. I wouldn't want to rely solely on a backpack for a bike tour, but it sure works great for hashtag bike commuting / groceries. Nietifa Van Suiker, Bluesky.
Wow, that was great. Thank you very much for that.
Someone else said, glad to hear someone else felt the same way about that discussion on e-bike power levels. That was our discussion about with Asha Weinstein from the Minetta Transportation Institute.
Right.
Who said that you shouldn't have more power than, I guess, a top athlete. That was
Usain Bolt.
Well, a top cyclist, I think, was her point. Yeah. And that was BirdmanStevens on Bluesky. And now, Stacy's news.
Stacy's with Charlie's news.
I don't think you can keep saying that. I think that's starting to
wear thin.
Well, Stacy was wondering why we have to keep saying that.
Okay.
Anyway, here's Stacy with the
Charlie's news.
Oh my God.
I'm Stacy with this week's news. Google Earth has a new data layer, cycling trip percentage. This is real data compiled from Google Maps for planners to better visualize and understand how our cities actually move. One interesting finding, the place with the highest rate of bike trips on the planet, Afua, Brazil. The city has been off limits to cars since 2002, and bikes make up 60% of all trips there. Now to A Tale of Three Bridges. From Tomasz Kepler, editor-in-chief of the Czech Republic's e-bike magazine, the city of Prague has built a beautiful new bridge expressly for the use of cyclists, pedestrians, trams, and buses. The Dvoreki Bridge, made of cubist concrete, opened to the public on Saturday, April 18th. There are no dedicated cycle paths. Rather, cyclists are permitted to ride across literally the entire width of the bridge on the pedestrian path or tramway. There's a report on Twitter that the city of Seven Bridges, Cologne, Germany, will rebuild the Mülheimer Brücke as a Fahrradstraße, meaning it will allow just bicycles and trams to travel across the bridge. Cyclists have been protesting the meager bike lane space allotted on the Mülheimer Bridge for some time now. There seem to be conflicting reports since Cologne's Bürgermeister has sidelined the authority of the city's transportation director, Toronto style. And in New York City, Mayor Mamdani has announced an immediate overhaul for cyclists and pedestrians on the Manhattan side of the Brooklyn Bridge. This was a major omission with the addition of protected bike lanes to the span in 2021. Unsurprisingly, Mayor Adams shelved these very plans in 2024. This administration is planning to complete it by June, just in time for New York to welcome the FIFA World Cup. I wonder how LA is doing in advance of the 2028 Olympics.
It's the same story wherever you put in a safe street upgrade, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's picture Main Street in Northampton, Massachusetts, or 72nd Street in New York City.
Well, we'll hear about 72nd Street in a minute. It's been in the works for a long time. And so has picture Main Street in Northampton, right, Massachusetts. This is the street redesign in Northampton. That's a traffic calming project that will make it more of a livable community. There's some changes that will take away car traffic, make it more pedestrian and bike friendly, put in some trees, take out some parking spaces. This is happening in the city of Northampton, which is a hub of a network of bike trails. It's sort of the low-hanging fruit. If any place should be made pedestrian and bike friendly, it's Main Street in Northampton. But all this opposition has come up, as it invariably does, among businesses who think that their customers need to park directly in front. It also has this opposition from a group called Save Our Schools, which is framing their opposition to Picture Main Street as people who care about kids, because the money that goes to Picture Main Street should be going to the schools. So here we have a couple members of the group called Strong Towns in Northampton, Jennifer Nery and Benjamin Spencer. Benjamin has been running for city council. We also have Ray Paquette, who's a math teacher at Northampton High School. He's also very active in the union. Welcome to all of you. Jennifer, do you have anything else you want to say about who you are before we begin?
Yeah, so I am Jen Nery. I am a member of Strong Towns Northampton. I am a former member of Main Street for Everyone, which was a group which has come and gone during this process, advocating for the most progressive possible Main Street. I am also one of the leaders of the sort of newer Let's Go Downtown group, which is a group of volunteers that's just taking on the task of educating the public about Picture Main Street, sort of engaging people and cheerleading for the project, kind of getting people excited about the future that we imagine for Northampton. I'm also a business owner in downtown, and I'm also a mom of 2 public school kids.
It seems like you'd be perfect to actually just say what Picture Main Street would do.
It's definitely multifaceted. The initial motivation for Picture Main Street was definitely to improve safety. The safety profile of our, 3 or 4 blocks of Main Street is pretty hideous. It's one of the top 5% locations in Massachusetts for accidents, especially with vulnerable users, because we have a lot of pedestrians and a lot of bicyclists. It's a small town with a very active center, a college, lots of kids, lots of older people. So improving safety was the main agenda item. And then it's also a good chance for us to improve our infrastructure under the road. We've got some 200-year-old infrastructure down there, pipes and conduits and so on that need to be improved. Lastly, it's a chance to improve the scene above ground, making a true public square in the middle of the city, as opposed to what it is now, which is basically a 5-lane highway with parking on either side. It's very car-centric right now, and we are just really looking forward to a more people-centric vision.
Which, who could disagree with, right?
Lots of people, apparently.
So tell me more about that. Benjamin, you said coming into this, you want to take the temperature down. What does that mean?
I think the conversations around this project, unfortunately, have been attached to conversations around school funding. And, this is something that I've seen in city meetings for the past couple of years now. And this is a project that was initiated by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation. It's Department of Transportation funding that's going to cover the bulk of this project. This isn't money that the city could divert to go to recurring expenses in the schools, so it's not even our money to divert. So I've just been concerned by the amount of what I would just say, inaccuracy, just in around the very basics of this conversation. I think it's really unfortunate that we're pitting, a safety improvement project that will make our downtown much better for everyone, but especially children and students, and pitting that against funding for our schools, where both are very important, and we can have these conversations without pitting the two against each other. And it's led to a lot of really contentious debate. And that's what I mean by taking the temperature down. I think we need to be sticking to the facts and talking about what's happening, why it's happening, and then moving forward from there.
All right. Raymond, so this is the first time you've met Jen or Ben, right?
Well, Jen, I think we're Facebook friends. We've interacted on Facebook at some point.
And you taught my child.
Oh, okay.
Lena Merton.
Okay, of course.
Cool.
Awesome.
Also, you're a bike rider, right?
Yep. No, I was actually going to piggyback off of what both of you said. And I agree with everything. I'm particularly struck by, Benjamin, what you said about bringing the temperature down, because it's very clear to me that this whole conversation about Picture Main Street has become really polarized. I've gotten virtually beaten up for saying anything good about Picture Main Street, because that must mean I hate kids and don't want schools to be funded. We've just lost the nuance. We've lost the ability to have an actual conversation, which is frustrating. I think some of that has to do with, in the realm of people who talk about school funding, or at least the people that I know that talk about school funding, there's a lack of trust in the mayor. What Benjamin said about the money coming from the state or the federal money, no doubt that's true, but there's at least mistrust in to what extent that will fully fund the project and to what extent the city will be on the hook for the rest. There's a perception that the mayor has these pet projects that she squirrels money away for that could be used for schools. And the truth is somewhere in the mix. I don't know where it is. I don't claim to know where it is, but I am very aware that there's a lot of cloudiness around that conversation.
This project started long before our current mayor was our mayor. This goes back multiple administrations in the city. This is a project that Mass DOT told the city, you have a very unsafe street and you need to fix it. I'm sure that the city has had to pay for hiring Tool Design, which is the urban planning firm that's done the design work for this plan. They are leaders in this field. That costs money. But the Mass DOT website, where it lists all the projects across the state that they're funding, you can see the funding that the state's going to be given. And that number has increased as the years go by because the cost of construction has increased as the years go by. But it's certainly my understanding that this is the state, where our tax dollars coming back to us in the community for this improvement to our Main Street.
And of course, our costs will continue to increase also because we are responsible for some portions of it, especially the infrastructure under the ground. Northampton is always responsible for its own pipes and electrical connections and all that stuff. That's nothing new. And as the project has been delayed a few times, of course, the costs go up because the costs go up for everything. But that's not mysterious, and it's still expected to be fully covered by the stabilization funds that we have to cover that.
So what if Northampton does spend money? This is a great use of money. That's downtown. That's where the kids hang out. Why is having more paraprofessionals in class necessarily more important than the kids being able to walk safely, in an environment that they feel good about?
Good question. I'm not going to answer it because I think it comes from the perspective of scarcity, which is what the schools are living in and the town is living in. We have inadequately funded schools. This winter was a nightmare for plow. There was just a lot of things that people thought we should be spending our money on. So there's a culture or a sense of scarcity. I think it's a trap to fall into, okay, let's build Picture Main Street or pay the fire department. That's not the conversation. And I don't really want to take a position on this because I don't know, but there is this perception that the mayor has been putting, we have a lot of money in our rainy day fund, whatever you call it, a disproportionate amount of money. I believe that that's fact.
I'm seeing some people disputing that with their face.
See that?
That's definitely the perception, that the mayor has been over budgeting and underestimating revenue, but we end up with this surplus, which then goes away into some fund that can't be used for recurring costs because it's considered one-time money, when there's the perception that if you got the numbers more close to reality, there wouldn't be this excess. There'd be more ongoing funding that could have been used all along. So there's a lack of trust there. That's what I hear. That's the window through which a lot of people look at Picture Main Street.
That is a narrative that gets presented at many city meetings. That is something we should be able to look at. I think my understanding is that the city is basically following state guidelines for how much money should go into reserves for free cash, which is sort of an unfortunately named title. But these are what go to our capital improvement projects and what go to help the city run in case there's needs arise. So while that is a narrative, it's not that we're sitting on more money than we ought to. We've got money in reserve. That's what the state, I'm blanking on the name of it, but there's a department from the state that just issues
Department of Revenue.
Guidance. Yeah, something along those lines that issues guidelines, and that's what we're following. And that's where we're at.
It's not just me that's, as you said, Ray, and framing it in terms of scarcity. It's Save Our Schools, this group that seems to be aligned with the teachers union here, NASE, in opposing Picture Main Street on the grounds that if you care about, a livable downtown, you don't care about kids. Right. And so I don't want to frame it that way.
No, neither do I. It's a false framing. It's a false narrative. There's one takeaway from this conversation for me. It's that we need to be truthful about this project and where the money comes from. And that's just how it has to be in order to have conversations that people can better understand. Unfortunately, I think a lot of space has been given to people who would tell you things about the project without even knowing about the project. And that's a whole nother problem. But this whole idea of schools versus Picture Main Street was very much a part of the last election and is very much a part of what the city's talking about. And I think it's really important for good information to get out there and for people to really, question what they're hearing and make sure what they're hearing is true.
I completely get why people are feeling driven by scarcity. The schools are underfunded. It's been happening for decades. I know your listenership is national, Nick, so there's a particular combination of rules in Massachusetts that have basically choked the local school districts. The state has stopped funding, school districts like ours. They're funding about half of what they used to fund, and that's not even adjusting for inflation and so on. So we're definitely in a really serious pinch, and it's been a growing pinch for years. So there's absolutely good reason that people are feeling like they have to scramble for anything they can get. However, the money for Picture Main Street is not something that the schools can get. I understand the fear and the scarcity atmosphere. I know that there are a lot of very subtle and abstruse state laws that are at work that make it very hard to communicate why the budget looks like it does. And I know that a lot of people just decided at some point that the mayor wasn't trustworthy, and there's very little that she can do at this point to become more trustworthy. She's been, in my opinion, very transparent with her budgets and her considerations for her budgets. But for some people, you present what I consider to be very transparent details, and they just say, well, that's not true. And, there's very little conversation to be had there. So sorry, Raymond.
Yeah. I have to go, but I'm happy to keep talking another time. Nice to meet you all, the two of you.
Nice to meet you, Raymond. Yeah, absolutely.
I would love to hear more about your own thoughts and all of this, because I know you're kind of representing the union and kind of yourself. So.
Well, I don't speak for the union.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
No, I want to be careful about that. I speak for me.
Yeah.
I can speak to the process that the union went through.
I would like to piggyback onto that to say, in no way do I speak for Strong Towns. I'm speaking for me. This is Benjamin Spencer you're talking to, full stop.
I have to go.
Jen and Ben, this is supposed to be a done deal. The whole process took however many years. They had their options that were presented in community workshops, and it's been funded and it's been signed and sealed and delivered. And the opposition keeps going and saying we weren't consulted enough. And what you find in road calming projects everywhere is that this happens. This doesn't happen in a highway expansion or when you widen streets, but it always happens with active transportation projects. Why is that?
Unfortunately, Western Massachusetts suffers quite a bit from car brain. There's just a lot of people who think that the world is only possible if you get in a car to go out there, rather than seeing this as a project that helps share the road with people. They feel like they're fighting to save a lifestyle that they've grown accustomed to. While it's true that in many cases, you need a car, it's also true that there's many people who live in Western Massachusetts who don't have a car and won't have a car. And we need to be sharing our space equitably. And that's part of what the Picture Main Street project does. But as you mentioned, it can be a real uphill climb.
I think there's a real lack of imagination. I mean, this isn't about these local people. This isn't about NASE. I'm not insulting any one person in this mix. This is the classic dynamic. People don't have an imagination for a lifestyle beyond their own. The number of people I hear saying that no one rides a bike.
As a bike goes by.
All of my friends and family ride bikes all the time. Yeah. The number of people who just can't imagine a lifestyle outside of their own, can't imagine getting out of their own cars, can't imagine getting around town or the region without a car, and then can't reimagine a space either. I feel blessed to have a pretty good geometric imagination. So I can imagine what the new Main Street will look like. And I'm like, I will hang out here, which is currently parking. Like I can imagine myself there. And I think a lot of people just don't have that imagination. It's the classic dynamic, and we have to get through this part. Unfortunately, we've had a few delays, which is just stretching out this moment of dissension longer and longer. And I just can't wait for it to get started, and I can't wait for it to be done. And I want to have tea on a park bench in what is now parking.
Yeah. And to be clear, there'll still be plenty of parking for people who need to drive or want to drive. No one's getting forced out of their car and put on a bicycle. All we're doing is learning to share.
Thank you, Jen and Ben, from Strong Towns, but not representing Strong Towns, Northampton.
Strong Towns.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for doing this.
Everybody in the interview said it's a false choice to say either you spend on kids and school or you spend on safe streets and a livable neighborhood. And if you're saying what you care about is kids, you should also care about the world they live in. The two main ways that this world is going to end both have to do with our car-dependent way of life, climate change and wars for oil.
And the number one thing that kills children is cars.
Cars, yeah. It's the number one killer of children. And now I will step down from
your soapbox.
And you have an interview.
Well, this is Carl Mahaney, who we've had on the show before. And it's the same thing, right? So let's talk to Carl. I think it was Yogi Berra who said, I have deja vu all over again. And we are seeing that in the Safe Streets movement, whether it be Northampton, Massachusetts, McGuiness Boulevard in New York City, or 72nd Street in New York City. We have with us today Carl Mahaney, who is the director of Streetopia Upper West Side, which is an open plans project. And he's been working on 72nd Street, an east-west corridor across New York City. Carl, welcome back to Bike Talk.
Thanks so much, Taylor. It's great to be here.
Yeah, tell us what's going on, because 72nd Street connects the West Side Highway, Riverside Park, Central Park, and then all the way over to the east side also. So
yeah, this is good stuff. This would be the first east-west protected bike lane anywhere uptown. And it would, in its final iteration, connect, like you said, the Greenway on the East River, right, all the way over on the east side, and the Greenway on the Hudson River, all the way on the west side through Central Park. 72nd Street right now is the only way that you can ride a bicycle across Central Park for that 2.5 mile length of Central Park. So it's a key connection already. People already use it, but this would make it so much safer and really invite folks who don't like riding in traffic.
Right.
Many people to get on bikes and to access these important greenways.
So why isn't it being done, or why hasn't it been done?
Yeah,
because you've been working on it for a while, I think.
Maybe a little context for the street itself would be useful here. So my focus as an advocate has been on West 72nd. So this is like a little over a half mile long stretch, about 4 blocks. It's highly residential. It's one of the densest residential neighborhoods honestly in North America, probably. Right. But the street is, and well, I'll say also, there's a ton of businesses on this street. A lot of mom and pop shops, a lot of like second floor, professional services, health and wellness businesses. So it attracts a ton of locals. Like in some ways, it's like a main street for the neighborhood.
Sure.
But it's 4 lanes of traffic, 2 in each direction, 2 curb lanes. About 2/3 of that curb space is parking. About 40% of that parking is free. At the same time, you've got this high foot traffic from those local businesses. Like I said, it's also quite near several cultural attractions, from Central Park and Riverside Park to the Museum of Natural History, Lincoln Center. All these things are within a few blocks of 72nd. So you get this great mix of sort of tourists and locals kind of, doing this beautiful dance together on very crowded sidewalks, with long crossing distances, not a lot of places to sit, not enough shade. If you stand out there for 5 minutes, you can see that it needs an upgrade. So our advocacy on this started 3 administrations ago in the Bill de Blasio administration. Wow. We engaged them on trying to identify some east-west access points for cycling on the Upper West Side, and 72nd Street immediately became an obvious one, sort of the obvious one to start with, because of its connection to both of the parks and because of its width and sort of its potential. It's really underutilized right now. And again, that's so evident when you're standing out there. So there was some momentum there in the de Blasio era. The community board, which is this, sort of appointed body of, local residents, they overwhelmingly passed a resolution in support of DOT coming up with a plan for this corridor. This was in 2020.
Wow. Okay.
So,
and we're in 2026, I believe.
It keeps going up. The years keep ticking off. It's funny that way. So in the Adams administration, we kept hearing, well, we're working on it. We're looking at it. But things, as I'm sure you've documented several times on the show, things really stagnated and in some cases went backwards in the Adams administration. So despite some talk of activity on 72nd Street from the DOT themselves, we never saw any material progress. So in 2024, we were like, okay, let's take our advocacy up a notch. And we did a deep dive of the corridor. We studied the curb uses in some detail. We did movement counts to understand who was moving and how and when and why. We did a commercial parking analysis to understand the thing I didn't mention earlier is a ton of double parking because it's such a wide street. So you end up with 2 lanes anyway. These folks who need to make deliveries or a plumber, they just don't have any place to go, so they double park. So we did a deep dive of the corridor, looked at all of those various things, and came up with a vision. I hesitate to call it a plan because it's not engineered, it was designed and I think very thoughtful. But it sort of showed the general public, but also elected officials and even the DOT what was possible.
What it could be, right?
What it could be, exactly right. And that's very much part of our I think mission at Streetopia Upper West Side is to sort of in the name, right? We're sort of like putting forward a vision of something and then getting people excited and then rallying them behind it to make it happen. So fast forward to this new era, as we're saying here in New York City, of Mayor Mamdani and Commissioner Mike Flynn at the DOT. And they are, you see it not just in Manhattan, but all over the city. They are dusting off these projects that Adams let stagnate or reversed. And they're going full tilt to kind of get this basic infrastructure in place. Things that really should have been done about a decade ago, they're starting to ramp up and implement sort of unapologetically. And 72nd Street, I think, falls in that category. So the proposal that came out last week from the DOT looks a lot like what we kind of envisioned. I think the bones of it are there. Maybe it doesn't have the full ambition of ours, but again, we're not engineers. We're visionaries and advocates. But it is a solid safety upgrade for the corridor that, again, is probably long overdue.
Can you explain what that is? I mean, I saw the drawing. It's a two-way bike lane on one side of the street and a road diet and a left turn lane. Can you sort of explain that? Is there a bus lane also?
Yeah, I'll walk you through it a little bit. So again, it's sort of this 4-block stretch that each block is pretty similar. So we've got a two-way
and these are long blocks. These aren't short blocks. These are like avenue blocks. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. The east-west blocks in Manhattan tend to be, I forget the distance, but quarter mile, something like that. They're quite long. So we've got 4 blocks east-west, and there's a two-way protected bike lane that they're proposing on the north side of the street. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, that bike lane is not wide enough. Not wide enough for today. It's definitely not wide enough for 5 years from now, and it's absolutely not wide enough for 10 years from now, but this is where they landed. They're taking one of those 4 lanes of traffic and making it basically designated a bike lane, moving the parking away from the curb. So it's that sort of parking protected model we see all over the rest of Manhattan, mostly on the avenues. And then they're doing 2 travel lanes in each direction with a sort of a turning bay in the middle that ends up being kind of this flex space. I think what you'll end up seeing there is double parking and probably illegal passing and all sorts of things that we probably don't want.
Emergency vehicles can often use that.
Absolutely, which is, that's sort of a potential, pro of having that that space. I think there are cons that we'll keep an eye on and try to identify if they are happening, maybe work with DOT to try to mitigate those. So that's the sort of like streetscape. That curb management piece is a really important piece to this puzzle because we've got right now an overabundance of motor vehicles on this street. Even the traffic volumes are low, they still sort of dominate the space. And in order to make space for other uses, we really need to manage the vehicle access, both moving and parked.
Well, let me ask, the pushback has been the normal pushback of you're taking away our parking for our customers, or there's no place for people to drop off deliveries.
Yes.
What's the anger? Because there's always so much anger by some people about these kinds of projects.
Yeah, it's really wild to see. Your Yogi Berra quote at the top, really gets at it. It's wild to see
deja vu all over again,
the same arguments come up over really, again, just basic safety upgrades. There's nothing There's nothing radical that's being proposed here. There's nothing that you can't walk around the corner to Columbus Avenue or Amsterdam Avenue and see in action today. Right. And guess what? Those businesses are thriving.
Right.
Where the bike lane is. So yeah, you nailed it. There's this business sort of reflexive opposition from businesses.
Right.
And I think that's, I mean, I don't want to speculate on what their motivation is, but I think anything that potentially affects the operations of a business.
Sure, of course, it's their lifeblood, right? Right.
Totally get that. But when you listen to some of the rhetoric, you know, they start to sort of veer into like, well, the real problem is the e-bikes, and we need to license those e-bikes, right. And there is this deflection that happens. And that, I think that undermines the veracity of their concerns. Like, absolutely, we need to have a conversation about making sure that businesses can continue to operate, right. and actually operate at a more seamless level, right? While also not endangering pedestrians,
right, and increasing the quality of life. We've been talking a lot with Ben Wolf, the director of Changing Lanes, and you and I were talking about that a second ago, and McGuiness Boulevard in Brooklyn. And they have started to implement some of those upgrades along there. And in the talkback after one of the screenings, one of the advocates who was there at the talkback said all of these arguments that the businesses were making against the upgrades on McGuiness Boulevard evaporated. Yeah. And once we put in some of the changes, no one was arguing anymore. No one said anything anymore. And when they had public outreach for another section of upgrading McGuiness Boulevard, no one even showed up to argue against it. So it really does. I mean, we all know that change is hard. And especially for these business owners, I think some of them have been there a long time. They don't want to rock the boat. But they're also ignorant to the idea of these upgrades can really improve their business as well as the quality of life and the safety for people along the corridor.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and we see that over and over and over again, that this opposition that is so virulent and you know, bordering on sort of aggressive and vitriolic, right, and hostile. Where does it go? Right? Because once you see that the change is actually better and benefits everybody, really, including the business, there's nothing to push back against, right? One other thing I want to just mention about the pushback, the opposition, there is the business opposition, and they fall into this category as well, where locals are saying, we weren't consulted about this.
Right.
Nobody asked us. This is a major change, and I didn't even know about this meeting until my the council members' newsletter, or until, I saw a flyer in my building. And maybe some of that, ignorance of the meeting happening is true. I don't know, but it was well publicized.
Sure.
Just for the record, I think there's tension here between engagement and allowing reflexive opposition to sort of like veto street improvements, right? And this is, I think it's a worthwhile conversation to have. I think engagement and communication is really important. I think people should understand that changes are happening, and they should be told why that change is important. No question. My guess, I don't have any inside information, but my guess is that the DOT views this as a basic street safety project. Right. So this is a safety upgrade that is not up for public discussion because it will make the street safer for everyone. I think the data bears that out.
Yeah. People want to feel heard. There's no question about that. But that doesn't mean that we do what has been done for the last, 40, 50 years that has got us to this point where West 72nd Street's a dangerous street to walk on and even to drive on. Well, Carl Mahaney of Streetopia Upper West Side, thanks again for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much, Taylor.
That's big news in New York. 72nd Street is so important. To have a two-way protected bike lane is amazing. Last up, this Sunday, April 26th, will be the first Cyclovia open streets in Los Angeles for a while. It's in Westwood for the first time. Here to tell us about this event and LA's Ciclovia in general is Ciclovia Chief Strategist Tafari Bain.
We have a little bit of a hiatus since our November event, but we're really excited to be back in West LA on the streets of Santa Monica and Westwood, right over near UCLA. Our first time in this neighborhood. This is our over 60 events so far, all over the city of Los Angeles, from South LA to downtown. And, we're planning on more routes this year for sure. But our first one, West LA, it's our first time in the communities, but really excited to see it. Car-free streets, we remove cars for the day and allow people to skate and play. It's free to everybody. And we organize vendors and other kinds of activities along the route so that folks have things to do. But really, it's about exploring community and really seeing these neighborhoods. There's so many cool restaurants and businesses in these neighborhoods. And it's our Iranian community here also, and lots of the communities meet up here. So we're really excited about highlighting this great neighborhood. The project originally is inspired by Ciclovia in Bogota, Colombia, where they now do 80 miles of streets every Sunday. So this is something that, is around the world. We've been blessed to be able to start it and keep it running here in Los Angeles as a way to showcase how cities can live without cars. People talk about us as a car city, but, we have beautiful weather, it's beautiful cultures and a really flat city. So it's perfect for biking, running, and an active lifestyle. If you want any more information about the event, you can go to www.ciclovia.org and you can get information about this event coming up this Sunday and all our future events.
Good show.
We want to thank our guests, Abe Sundance from Bluesky, and Carl Mahaney, Ben Wolf, and Bronwyn Brightener, and Eric Brightwell, Gloria Ines.
And thanks, Jen Nery and Raymond Spencer from Strong Towns, Northampton, and Ray Paquette, the math teacher from Northampton High School.
And we also want to thank Yogi Berra. And of course, we always want to thank our regulars, Julie Richard, Kevin Burton, Amy Ziering, Lindsay Sturman, Stacy Randecker, Josh Hagland. And for the last time, I think we want to thank Charlie Lighthizer, who's been a great intern with us all these years. And he's moving on to bigger and better things than Bike Talk? Is that even possible?
He got a job. In place of a quote, I would like to give a shout out to the person who bought Biking Uphill in the Rain from the biketalk.org bookshop page. Tom Fucaloro is the author. He's been a guest on Bike Talk. Speaking of that, Independent Bookstore Day is coming up.
April 25th. So go out and buy a book about bikes and share it.
So there's a bookstore bike crawl coming up in Chicago and probably other places.
Yeah.
If you look for them.
Love that.
Thanks, Taylor.
Ride safe.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocras and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and serving all of Southern California.
And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Oh, got yourself a bike. 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 Oh, got yourself a bike.